Alrighty, everybody, welcome back to That's Just My Opinion. I am Merlin, and today we will be discussing The Hero of Ages, Book 3 of the original Mistborn trilogy, or Mistborn Era 1, by Brandon Sanderson. So, this is it. This is the end of Era 1. Now, for those of you who know, if you watched my previous video on the Well of Ascension, the book ends with Ruin being freed, and Elend has become a Mistborn. So at the end of Well of Ascension, I was looking forward to maybe a little Elend training montage. Unfortunately, my wish was not granted. We actually cut a couple of years into the future. Elend is now a competent Mistborn. He's not the greatest Mistborn, but he's an okay Mistborn. And so we've got him and Vin desperately trying to keep the final empire together while the world is literally ending around them. The ash mounts are spewing out more and more ash. They're blocking out more and more sunlight. It's just getting bad, and we've still got the Inquisitors who are out there taking control of Kolos, and it's a bad time for everyone, and Ruin is doing his machinations and trying to screw things up. So yeah, it's not a good time. And we also have Sazed, who is going through a massive crisis of faith following her name is escaping me, his gal from the last book, something with a T. Anyway, so he's having a huge crisis of faith and is going through all of his religions and trying to find one that is true, one that is not contradictory, that makes perfect sense. And so far, that's not going well. So really the story is about following, Vin is still one of our major characters. I'd say this really is between Vin, Elend, and Sazed are our three main characters. We also get Marsh pops up a little bit in this as well, and when his sections come up, the poor guy is not doing good, because as an Inquisitor, Ruin has basically taken control of him, and so yeah, Marsh has basically become a puppet of Ruin, and he's like trying to figure out a way to like maybe fight back and like get a chance to like maybe help in some way, but it's not going well for him. So throughout the book, you know, we're following the crew, and Vin in particular, as they try to find these 5 caches that were left behind by the Lord Ruler that have something in them. Each one is definitely like prepared for this situation, where one has like extra food, like a ton of food stores, one has like water storage, and they're looking for the ATM still. They don't know where it is, and Vin's kind of the opinion, like, the ATM, it's useless now, okay? It doesn't matter. ATM, there's no point for it, so why the hell are we still looking for it? But Elend is, sorry, still trying to find it. So they're doing this. We also get Spook is another POV character for this, and dude, woo, Spook, going from kind of a second tier to, he's pretty top tier in this. But I really enjoyed it with Vin and Elend's relationship, that it's solid. So one thing that, reading more Sanderson, that I really appreciate is that he does put in a lot of like romantic subplots that I think in every book I've read by him, there's at least some sort of romantic relationship going on in the background, or there is a romantic relationship between two characters, but it doesn't fall into a lot of the romance tropes of like miscommunication and all that. Like, Vin and Elend are pretty rock solid this time around. So you've got them trying to get to these caches, trying to figure out what's going on, what was the problem with the Lord Ruler, what does Ruin want, because, well, you find out more about the truth of Ruin and preservation, and it's so good. Yeah, it's really well done, and I love seeing the characters come together and just the struggles they're making as they are trying to save the world, and it is literally ending. The world is ending. And so we get up to because the other really interesting thing that's happening in this one, and it's starting a little bit in the last one, is that the mists are hurting people. That people get sick if they go out in the mists, and some die. And they're trying to figure out why, and the twist reveal for that is so good, because you find out, I'm kind of going to skip to the end, because the climax of this book is just so amazingly well done. So we get to the end, and basically we figure out that the Kandra, because Orsir, who was Vin's Kandra in the last one, who was Zane's but ended up kind of switching sides to be with Vin, you end up finding out the truth about where the atium is, and that it never left the pits of Hath-Sin, that it is still there, and the Kandra were hiding it. And you find out the truth about, because the Kandra have generations, and the first generation of Kandra were actually the Lord Ruler's like friends who were also Terrismen, and he turned them into Kandra, and that's where these Kandra come from. They were the original Terrismen. So when Sazed finds out about that, he like runs to go see them and like find out about the Terris religion is and everything. And he's a little disappointed by the results, but we find out that the atium is still there. It's still at the pits of Hath-Sin, which was just the epitome of like, oh my god, the Lord Ruler. And it's something with this that I really liked in this book, is that Sanderson really humanizes the Lord Ruler in this. Like, you can't say he's a good guy, because he did a lot of stuff, but you also find out that might have also been Ruin influencing him and kind of making him a little crazy. But even Elend is like, you know, I don't agree with what he did, but I kind of empathize with what he had to deal with. So I really liked that. And so, you know, there's the final fight going down. Vin ends up having to fight like all of these Inquisitors at the same time, including Marsh, and she ends up killing all of them except for Marsh. She just like crushes in his eye, and so he's got like a spike sticking a little further out the back of his head. And then when it gets to like the end, is that you find out that the Mist Spirit from the last book is actually Preservation, and that the Mists are Preservation's like body or conscious. They're shards, okay? You kind of just gotta, it's part of their power set. And the Mist Spirit was actually Preservation, and he was trying to, you know, guide them in the right directions, but Preservation was super weak because Preservation had imprisoned Ruin, because they had a deal, and Ruin and Preservation broke his end of the deal. It's basically Preservation and Ruin on their own couldn't create anything, but together they could. So part of the deal was, if they made this, if Preservation got to create his life and see it blossom, eventually Ruin would get to destroy it, because he is Ruin. But Preservation reneged on that deal and imprisoned Ruin. So Vin is fighting these Inquisitors, and she ends up taking the Mists into herself, like she did back in book 1 when she fought the Lord Ruler, because you find out there's a whole thing with a new style of metallurgy in this called hemalurgy. It's a whole thing, and when Vin finally figures it out, she takes in the mist and she actually ascends and becomes Preservation. And at the same time that she becomes Preservation, Elend has like gathered up the survivors, and they've told people like, get to the caves, get underground, get somewhere safe, because when Vin ascends, she tries to like undo the damage. She tries to like, she removes the ash mounts and like clears the ash, but then the planet is now too close to the sun, so everything starts burning. So she like flips the planet around real quick to make it night again for everybody. But you know, now they're on the clock that once the sun rises, they're all gonna burn. So they're like, get underground, get underground. And Elend is there at the pits of Hath-Sin, and there are all of these Koloss that are attacking because Ruin needs his body back. That's what the atium is. It's Ruin's body. So he needs that to like regain his full power. And so, you know, they're sending these Koloss in, and they're trying to figure out what happened, and basically figure out why the Mist were making people sick was to snap them, so that way they could unlock their Mistborn abilities, because this is when you find out about mistings of rarer abilities, like atium mistings that can only burn atium. And these mad lads hold the line against a whole Koloss army, because they all just like swallow as much atium as they can, and then go out there and start slaughtering these Koloss and hold the line to keep the Koloss from getting in. Some of the Kandra do kind of turn on them, but it's okay. And Orsir does a self-sacrifice, and I was like, no, Orsir, I love that Kandra. But they hold the line, and Vin while she is ascended, she's like helping Elend, and then Elend ends up dying. He ends up getting like his head cut off by a Koloss, and I was like, no! And then when that happens and Rowan's getting all gloaty over Vin and like, oh, well, fragile humans, very, very, snide. Vin's like, he was the only thing I had left to live for, and now that Elend's gone, we're done. And she attacks Ruin, and she ends up, like, their power, like, clashing together, ends up killing both Ruin and Preservation. Well, kills Vin and the original holder of Ruin, and Sazed, like, finds their bodies. Like, he like, comes out and he sees Vin and Elend dead, and he's, like, holding Vin's body, and he's just like, what do we do? She was, like, the hero, what do we do? And that's when there's this prophecy of the Hero of Ages, and everyone thought it was Vin. And it made sense, in that way that prophecies are vague and can fit a million different situations. But Sazed, having learned the original prophecy, realizes that it's actually him, that he is the Hero of Ages, because the power of Preservation and Ruin are now loose. They don't have a holder, a vessel for their power. So Sazed ends up using his copper mines, which is a whole thing because he was like kind of refusing to use them throughout the book, and he takes up Ruin in one arm and Preservation in the other, and he ascends to godhood basically, and is able to use the knowledge of all of the religions that he's collected, because they each have clues and hints to what the world was like before the original ascension. And so he's able to put the world back together and the way it was. And then, the world is safe, and everyone starts like coming out of the caves, and they find Vin and Elend's bodies, and Vin and Elend are dead. Sazed basically leaves them a book of like, hey, this is what you need to do to rebuild society. I'm sorry, I tried to fix them, but, basically their souls or spirits or whatever you want to call it have already moved on, but don't worry, they're in a better place, they're happy. And so, yeah, I cried at the end of this book. It is such like a bittersweet ending. It's still really good, but man, just like, I wanted Elend and Vin to like get their happily ever after and to like go into retirement and just be content. But I understand for the story, it makes sense that they die. And I mean, overall, and this, so yeah, the book is amazing. It's still so good. I'm gonna kind of now get into my thoughts on the overall series of Era 1 Mistborn. So I think the thing that you have to keep in mind when you're reading Mistborn is that in the end, the whole thing is a heist gone wrong. From the very beginning of Mistborn, it is all about this heist that just goes wrong one after the other, from Kelsier originally dying at the end of book 1, and then Dox and Spook's uncle, I'm spacing on his name, Clubs, dying, and Sazed's girl dying. God, I can't remember her name, it's driving me nuts. Something with a T, I think. Dying at the end of Well of Ascension, and then in this one you have Vin and Elend dying. It's just like you're given like all of this weight of like the cost that it took to put the world back together, and Sazed ascending to godhood, and just it's so well written, and there is so much foreshadowing of like little things that happen as far back as book 1 that when you get to book 3 you're like, oh, that was set up all the way in book 1. It is Sanderson's foreshadowing, and just like how he's able to set up these things that seem innocuous in early books. You're like, oh, okay, sure, fine, whatever. And then when you get to the final book and you find out like the truth about them, you're just like, right there, it was right in front of my face the entire time. It's very, very good. Mistborn, I think it's a fantastic series, and I really enjoyed it. Is it my favorite work of Sanderson's? No, but it's still very well, it's a great series. I give Hero of Ages, it's a solid 4 out of 5. So in future news, I have committed myself to reading everything in the Cosmere, because I need details, I need to theory craft. So I'm working my way through Mistborn Era 2 right now. I'll probably do that, at least the 3 books that are currently out, all in one video. I'll just talk about all 3 at once. Very excited to do that. Also look forward to Elantris. That will be coming soon. And then I've also got Warbreaker to still get through, and then all the short stories. So very excited to be doing that. Romance novels will still be popping up in here from time to time, but I'm kind of getting back more into the high fantasy stuff, and I'm really enjoying it. So yeah, that's stuff to look forward to in the future, but for right now, the Hero of Ages, it's a solid 4 out of 5, a wonderful conclusion, if not bittersweet, to the Mistborn trilogy. But hey, that's just my opinion. If you disagree with me, that's totally cool. And if there's anything you'd like to see me take a crack at in the future, leave your comments down below. And I'll talk to you guys in a little while.